Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. Hopefully you have a little extra time on your hands because there is a whole slew of games on Thursday and Friday, which will be exciting. But before we get to those, we have to look back at the week that was, which started all the way back on last Thursday when the Buffalo Bills went to play the Houston Texans. The Bills seemed like they were back in shape after pounding the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Texans still had Davis Mills in there. So surely this was going to be a Bills cruise to the victory. And that's why they play the games. Texans getting the 23-19 victory. The Bills offense looked rough, Dennis. They have today signed Brandon Cooks. I don't know that that's going to be the answer to why Josh Allen got sacked 8 times and went from scoring 6 touchdowns himself to looking completely lost on the field. But is it time to kind of worry about this Bills offense?
James Cook and Dalton Kincaid seem to be like solid. And then Khalil Shakir is he's a wide receiver 3. But then you just take Brandon Cooks and Gabe Davis and Elijah Moore and Curtis Samuel and Joshua Palmer. You just kind of stack them all up in the same trench coat and throw a jersey number that's for wide receivers on it and hope that they pass for a wide receiver 2 for this team. They have a dearth of talent at wide receiver. They've been trying to piece it together. I don't think at this point in his career Brandon Cooks is the answer, but also giving up 8 sacks or 10 sacks, whatever it was, 8 sacks, isn't good for the passing game by any stretch of the imagination. Allen he threw for 253 yards, and James Cook had his sterling 100-yard day with a touchdown. And what he only caught 3 passes, but it was just one of those games where they weren't able to sustain anything, and Houston hung around and until they get, I think, a bona fide stud. Don't get me wrong, I like Khalil Shakir, but when I say he's like Amon-Ra St. Brown light, I mean light as in he can't carry the wide receiver 1 like Amon-Ra can. He's similar in traits, but he just doesn't quite have that next level that Amon-Ra gives you. They need, obviously they've had a falling out with Keon Coleman, and I don't expect him to be taking, a major step, but they're going to need to take a look at the wide receiver position, either in free agency or the draft, and see if they can manufacture themselves an alpha wide receiver.
Meanwhile, Mills has won 3 straight starts to get the Texans back to 6-5. We mentioned he's kind of been a backup behind CJ Stroud there in Houston, but with this kind of a performance and a lot of teams in need of help at quarterback, could he be a target for somebody this offseason?
He should be, but he's under contract through 2026. So it's one of those, him and Mac Jones both, I think, are probably the best backups that you would want to target to bring in for sort of I don't want to say long-term answer, but a midterm answer. And, Mills, he was drafted, I think, in the fourth round by Houston. Third round by Houston. He was expected to be Deshaun Watson's backup. And then Watson got injured and then had the scandal, and Mills started for most of 2 years and was serviceable. He kind of got thrust into it, and he was serviceable. Not, he was a QB3 with QB2 upside. So he was basically as a rookie and a second-year guy, he was a matchup streamable kind of QB2 option. And then they drafted C.J. Stroud, who had a great rookie year and has admittedly taken a step back the last couple seasons. And so when you see Mills come in and, he's played pretty well. It isn't like he's throwing for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns every game, but that's not the type of quarterback that he is. He is more in, pocket quarterback. He's got some mobility, but he's not going to look to run. He can evade some pressure. And so if I'm a team like, so let's say the Jets, the Raiders, and the Saints are all going to be drafting high enough that they can take a shot on one of the top quarterbacks in this upcoming draft. But then when you look at Arizona, seems like they're souring on Kyler Murray. Jacoby Brissett's 33 years old or something. He's probably not the long-term answer there. Miami, it seems like there could be a little something there with Tua and his health, and can they make a decision to move on from Tua? Minnesota, JJ McCarthy looks less and less like the answer every start. Pittsburgh, it's, they drafted Will Howard this year, and, he's a fifth or sixth round draft pick. So I don't think, they have high hopes, unlike me. Go Bucks. Mason Rudolph is probably not going to be the long-term successor. And who knows if Aaron Rodgers is going to be back next year. There's talk he wants to be. And then in Atlanta, Kirk Cousins played reasonably well this week. But there's talk that depending on how Michael Penix's surgery goes, this may be, they may have to just kind of put him aside and make other decisions this offseason. Saw a blurb on Roto World about that. So there are some teams out there that could be looking for a Davis Mills or a Mac Jones and be willing to trade a draft pick. I think on Roto World, I forget who reported it that Roto World reblurbed it, but they were saying they thought that San Fran could get a second and a third round pick for Mac Jones. That feels kind of high to me, but maybe.
We'll have to see. Next up, the Steelers went to Chicago. Bears got the 31-28 victory to move to 8-3 on the season. No Aaron Rodgers in this one. They leaned on the backfield. Jaylen Warren, 18 carries, 68 yards and a touchdown. Gainwell, 10 carries, 92 yards, including a 55-yard breakaway. Also caught 6 passes. Seems like they've kind of settled into a duo. Warren more of the runner, Gainwell doing more of the receiving work, which has helped him in a lot of ways be the better fantasy option. But how are you feeling about this backfield?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because coming into the season, we all kind of viewed Gainwell as the short yardage back, the kind of goal line, good in pass protection and good receiver. But Warren was that receiving back when Najee Harris was there, and we expected that, he would get he'd be the lead back, and it'd be, maybe a 60-40 split. And then you'd have some games where Gainwell kind of pops off. Well, Warren didn't get a single target this week. Gainwell got 6, and then he busted off that long run. So they're developing into a nice complement to each other. And I think the reality of the situation is you can flip-flop them in either role. Like right now, they're using Gainwell as the passing down guy, the 4-minute guy. But they could easily switch and put Jaylen Warren in that. They feel to me like Warren is kind of a low-end RB2 and Gainwell is a flex. Gainwell can, kind of get a boost if he breaks a big play like he did last week, or maybe he ends up getting the touchdowns because oddly enough, they'll use him in the passing game and then throw him in there in goal line after Warren has done a bunch of work. So to me, that's where I'm comfortable with them. But it seems like Gainwell right now is the one with the explosiveness. And Warren, while still shifty and being productive, they're both, I think, startable. Ideally, you'd probably want them as a high-end and low-end flex, and then everything else they give you is upside. But, we're going into week 13, and slim pickings out there.
Meanwhile, it's been a rough season for DJ Moore, but 7 targets on Sunday, caught 5 for 64 and 2 touchdowns. Is this a hopeful sign to you or just kind of fluky because the Chicago Bears offense seems to be all over the place?
We've been talking for several weeks about how the Bears players are going to take some time to really get unconsciously competent in the Ben Johnson offense. And I think we see flashes of it. Monangai had a decent game, 48 yards and a touchdown. DeAndre Swift must have said something to Ben Johnson that chapped his ass because he seemed to get disappeared. It feels like it's definitely a good sign for DJ Moore, but it also feels a little bit fluky because right now, Caleb Williams is only completing about 59% and change when it comes to the passing game. And while he threw the ball 39 times, he did have the 3 touchdowns. Williams is a dynamic offensive player. And when you team him with DJ Moore, who is also dynamic, and Rome Odunze, Monangai, and Swift, and Loveland, and Kmet, they have, and Luther Burden, they have a lot of weapons. And the offensive line is starting to gel. I think right now Ben Johnson is in the process of coaching some of the chaos out of Caleb Williams, trying to get him to that point where, look, we can still use these talents that you have, but let's do it actionably as opposed to reactionably, if that's a word.
Meanwhile, the Patriots went to Cincinnati, became the first 10-win team of the season with a 26-20 victory against the Bengals. A little closer than maybe we thought it was going to be. Ramondre Stevenson returned for the Patriots. Before he went out injured, he seemed to be dominating the backfield touches. A lot of concern after a couple good breakout weeks for Henderson. What would happen when Ramondre came back? Well, only 6 carries for 5 yards versus 18 for Henderson. Only 1 reception for 5 yards. Is this kind of a sign that the end is here for Stevenson being a playable asset on the Patriots?
It's easy to say yes, but then, it's the Patriots and Ramondre Stevenson. It looks like the Pats have recognized that TreVeyon Henderson provides the boom. While he wasn't super efficient in the running game, only 3.7 yards per carry, and 3 passes for 15 yards. That was substantially better than Stevenson's 0.8 yards per carry. It feels to me like they're shaping up to be sort of a poor man's Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. And it's one of those situations that you could see them kind of roll with that and get that, where if Henderson's breaking off some chunks and making some plays, they're going to kind of let him roll with it. They're going to give Stevenson a series here or there, and if he starts to break off some chunks, they may roll with it. But a lot of it will come down to, can TreVeyon Henderson continue to keep improving his pass blocking? And if he does, I think he'll be in there. Now, Now, with that all being said, watch Stevenson get 22 carries next week against the Giants and Henderson get 5. So
yeah, fun times. Meanwhile, the Bengals now 3-8. Joe Burrow returning on Thanksgiving for reasons surpassing understanding. Bengals not going anywhere this season. They have Higgins and Burrow and Chase under long-term contracts. What do you think they should do this offseason to try to compete more?
O-line and defense. O-line and defense. They don't need to draft any running backs. They don't need to draft any tight ends. They don't need to draft any wide receivers. They need to draft offensive linemen and defensive linemen and cover guys. That's who they need to sign in free agency. And then now I saw earlier today on Roto World, I'm going to reference Roto World because I remember seeing it. Lou Anarumo is supposed to be the hot name for the Jets job, the Giants job, not the Jets. So now Cincinnati brought in, we got a guy to fix our defense. Yeah, we're not going to give him any weapons. But, I mean, if I'm Lou Anarumo and I look at that Cincinnati defense and the Giants say, hey, you want to come and play with Dexter Lawrence and Quinnen Williams Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns and Abdul Carter, I'd be like, hell to the yeah. So.
They've been kind of underwhelming in terms of their performance, though. So,
well, they don't have any talent. Their best defensive players been out in Trey Hendrickson.
I meant the Giants because you were talking about, does he want to go?
They just fired their defensive coordinator this week too.
Yeah, but I mean, on paper, that's one that on paper, it looks real good. But meanwhile, the Lions went to New York and it took overtime. The Giants went to Detroit and it took overtime, but the Lions did get the 34-27 victory. Pretty big day for Wan'Dale Robinson. 14 targets, caught 9 for 156 and a touchdown. How are we feeling about Wan'Dale?
Wan'Dale is a plug-and-play, top 20 wide receiver, I think, right now. He is having a phenomenal year and has really stepped into the lurch with Malik Neighbors out. And that's allowed them to, kind of fill in around him with Darius Slayton and Isaiah Hodgins. And it's just, they don't have a lot of depth. Tracy and Singletary are serviceable at running back with Scatteraboo out. But getting Malik Neighbors back next year, Jackson Dart coming back and getting some more reps under his belt to prepare for next year. It was a wild game. I mean, Jameis Winston catching a 33-yard
touchdown pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he threw a couple. This was the Winston we thought we were going to see last week. He just waited. He needed a week to get that shelf going. I remember seeing this last week that Dan Campbell talked about needing to get David Montgomery more involved and they were going to feature him more. Apparently that meant 5 carries for 18 yards. He did get 3 receptions for 19, but this offense feels like it's really just solidified around Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown, especially with Laporta on IR. Are you, can you even really start Montgomery anymore?
It's tough. It's tough. I'm a huge David Montgomery fan. He was my guy that year coming out. I think he's still a good back, but when you've got a Ferrari in the garage, you can only drive that Chevette so many times. And Jahmyr Gibbs is phenomenal. Just watching him play and his speed and escapability and ability to catch the ball is just otherworldly. And this is a game where Jared Goff threw the ball 42 times and Gibbs still put up 219 yards on the ground with those 2 long touchdown runs. It's just did you ever follow basketball at all?
Mm-hmm.
So you remember what they used to say about Vince Carter? He's half man, half amazing. That's Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah. You know what isn't amazing is the Minnesota Vikings offense. They went to Green Bay and were blown out 23-6. JJ McCarthy, 12-19, 87 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 5 sacks. Actually had a QB rating that would have been better if he would have taken every snap and spiked the ball, which kind of tells you where Minnesota's at offensively. They're not running very well. Not a lot of opportunities for Jefferson, Hockenson, and Addison when you can't throw like that. McCarthy now, I think he's dealing with a concussion, not a lock for week 13. But what are we doing with Minnesota?
Yeah, I think he walked into the locker room and Kevin O'Connell jumped out from behind the door and hit him with a stick is why he's got a concussion.
It feels kind of like the last time he was injured. He didn't miss any time in the game. Oh, yeah, he's hurt. He may not be playing. Oh, you mean after the fans were calling for the backup quarterback?
Yeah, can Max Brosmer do any worse? I mean, let's roll it. Let's roll him out there and see if the mission is simple. Get the ball to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and then that's going to allow there to be room for Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. And I work really hard to temper my anti-Wolverine bias because I recognize that it's there. I'm an Ohio State guy. I recognize my Wolverine bias, and I want to give McCarthy the benefit of the doubt. But watching him play in college and seeing Jim Harbaugh hide him, well, I guess you wouldn't draft J.J. McCarthy if you had Justin Herbert, so that's probably not fair. But, McCarthy just has not been good. And he just – I don't know if he's ever going to be good. I got to be honest, I'd rather have Anthony Richardson.
Which, that's another guy that may end up coming free on the QB market. For the Packers, there was no Josh Jacobs, but that didn't end up being a problem. Another mediocre game from Jordan Love, but Emmanuel Wilson, 28 carries, 107 yards, 2 touchdowns, had a couple of receptions. Do we like him if Jacob misses again on Thursday?
Yeah, he's the guy that's going to get volume. They trust him to have volume. They gave Chris Brooks 8 carries, but they ran a lot. Let's see, they ran the ball, 37 times, not including quarterbacks. And, we talked about it last week. Emmanuel Wilson is pretty much a clone of Josh Jacobs, but he was a small school guy, same size, a little bit faster, not quite as agile, just ever so slightly less agile. But they're both, those 5'11", 220, 225-pound backs that can grind it out, carry the load. And so if Jacobs misses time, I swear I'm going to actually start him in the league that I picked him up and handcuffed him to Jacobs that I forgot to do last week.
I know. Be nice. Seattle Seahawks went to Tennessee, and this is another game that was closer than we thought it might be, but they got the 30-24 victory. But I want to talk about Rashid Shaheed. They made a big trade to acquire him, seemingly to feature him in the passing game, and in 3 games with the Seahawks, he has 3 receptions for 30 yards on 8 targets. What gives?
I think he's just sort of still making the transition, hasn't really found his place in Seattle yet. If you still have the ability to trade, it might be an opportunity to kind of get him at a, wide receiver 4 or 5 price, and he could end up being a wide receiver, 3, 4, maybe even a wide receiver 2 down the stretch and into the playoffs.
It's kind of reminding me of when the Bills traded for Amari Cooper last year, though, in terms of expectation versus reality. Meanwhile, the Titans, they didn't win, but they put up 24 points. They were able to move the ball on a decent defense. Are they actually showing signs of improvement?
I think so. It's, Ward, I don't think you want Cam Ward throwing the ball 42 times right now. He's still young. He had the rushing touchdown. He doesn't have a lot in the way of targets. They actually brought the old college teammate Xavier Restrepo up, and he was second on the team in targets with 6. Spears and Pollard had 5 targets each, but Chimere Dike and Gunnar Helm both sort of led the way with 7 targets.
I'm liking DK more and more because he contributes on special teams too.
He does. I think we're not looking at a Josh Rosen situation here in Tennessee. I think they recognize the team isn't great. They lost Ridley, who was supposed to be their one. Okonkwo is kind of meh. I think Gunnar Helm is really taken over and going to be that Dalton Kincaid tight end for them. And then if they can bring in a stud receiver to kind of pair there, I don't know that how Spears and Pollard, I don't know how long you're going to get there. Do you at what point, at some point you have to upgrade that running back spot, whether that's through the draft or through free agency. They have a lot of other needs. They need help along the O-line. They need help on defense. Right now, most mock drafts that I've seen have them taking Ruben Bain out of Miami, the defensive lineman. So
you don't end up at 1-10 unless you have a lot of holes to fill.
That is true, sir.
The Indianapolis Colts went to Kansas City, and the Chiefs got the 23-20 overtime victory. A lot of pressure on Daniel Jones to show up, not just in the season, but in some of these bigger games. The Colts didn't win, but this was much better game for Jones than when he played in Pittsburgh and kind of reverted to being that turnover machine. Only 19 of 31 for 181, but 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Did have 16 yards on 3 carries, no fumbles. Was this a better performance for Jones, despite the outcome?
I think this is the type of performance you want to see from him. You'd probably like to have him complete a few more passes. But ultimately, he didn't get much help from the running game. Taylor only put up 58 yards. Nobody else had a carry outside of him. They didn't have, let's see, what was there? They only ran 50 offensive plays compared to Kansas City's 91. They were on the time of possession, they went into overtime, and they had a deficit of, almost 20 minutes, 17-minute deficit in time of possession. That puts a ton of pressure on your defense. And while Kansas City isn't the Kansas City that we used to see, Kareem Hunt did have an inefficient 104 yards and a touchdown. Mahomes did throw for 352 yards, even though he didn't put any in the end zone. But it's tough to win games when your defense just lets the other team keep converting and staying on the field. What is it there? Let's see.
Well, and they did it.
Kansas City had drives of 17, 13, 10, 11, 15, and 12 plays.
And Kansas City did it a lot. We've talked about them not having any running game, but they really committed to running. And Kareem Hunt, wasn't blowing you away with yards per carry, but 30 carries, 104 yards, touchdown, kind of carrying the load back there. Do you think he can keep that up?
I think he can continue to be volume-based and efficient. I mean, that's who he is now. He'll get he caught 3 passes for 26 yards. So if you're and don't get me wrong, I think Kansas City is okay. They'll be perfectly happy to give Kareem Hunt 18 carries for 65 yards and a touchdown and 3 or 4 targets. As long as Mahomes is moving the ball with the rest of the offense, I think they'll be happy to eat up the clock like that.
The Jets went to Baltimore. The Ravens got the 23-10 home victory. It was first start for Tyrod Taylor, 17 of 28, 222 yards, a touchdown, interception. 3 sacks, kind of a middling quarterback rating, didn't offer much in the running game. Jets only scored 10 points. Are they really better with him back there?
I mean, he's a more competent passer, but I don't know if that means more wins for the Jets. They got Garrett Wilson hurt. He's still out. Adonai Mitchell trying to recover from, his fumble in Indianapolis, and he just can't get over the dropsies. I like John Mechie coming on. I think Mechie has earned himself the slot role in New York. I'd be happy to see him. Like, I liked him coming out of college, and then he got cancer and ended up, he's had to work his way back. But I don't hate the trio of Garrett Wilson, John Mechie, and Adonai Mitchell. And if they bring back Breece Hall, that would be, that makes for a decent set of skill positions. You just need to add a quarterback that can execute there. And right now, I think Taylor can execute at a, I don't even know if he's replacement level at this point in his career. And Justin Fields hasn't shown that he can execute. So, we're likely looking at a rookie starting quarterback in New York next year. And I don't know how well that bodes with the Tanner Engstrom offense, but it should be fun to watch. Maybe.
For the Ravens, another good game for Derrick Henry, but I want to talk about Lamar Jackson. Only 13 of 23, 153 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, only 11 yards on 7 carries. This is his third game back, and over those 3 games, he has quarterback 21, only averaging 10 points per game. That is not the Lamar Jackson we're used to seeing. Do you think he's still struggling with injury? I mean, what is up with Lamar?
Yeah, they're giving him the first day of the practice week off, giving him that veteran deference. He's still kind of dealing with the toe, I think, is what he's got injured, and that will obviously affect his running. He's not playing very efficient right now. Mark Andrews isn't the go-to that he once was. They just don't have, outside of Zay Flowers, they don't have a consistent threat in the passing game anymore. Like the last couple seasons, you were able to count on Rashad Bateman turning in a big play here or there, a big touchdown here or there. Bateman was out, and Derrick Henry is kind of entering the Kareem Hunt phase of his career, it looks like.
Yeah. Another AFC North team, the Cleveland Browns, went to Las Vegas, got the 24-10 victory. Shedeur Sanders, his first start, he was awful in relief in Week 11, but 11 of 20, 209 yards, a touchdown, interception. Not incredible, but not terrible. He is going to be, I think they said, the starter moving forward. What did you think of him?
Well, I think he's earned the right to start by virtue of getting a win. But 11 of 20, that's barely, that's not great. He had 209 yards passing and a touchdown, but the touchdown was all Dylan Sampson. Dylan Sampson had a 66-yard touchdown pass. He also had 59 yards receiving on the game. So his other pass he caught was for a loss.
A big loss.
Of that 66 yards of Dylan Sampson's touchdown, it was all Dylan Sampson. It was like a behind the line of scrimmage catch that he took all the way. Now you knock that off and Sanders is down around 140. Then you take that. It was a nice play. He rolled out, got out on the right side, chucked the ball down the field to Isaiah Bond, who made a nice catch. I think that was a good play. That's what I think I want to see from Shedeur. I think they need to get him moving, because then that forces him to have to make a decision. And his Achilles heel is, I'm going to hold the ball because I think I can make a better play. It's like, well, if we got you rolling right, you're going to run out of field, dude. Make a decision here. And as much as I was pulling for Dylan Gabriel, I'm pulling more for wins. And it doesn't matter to me whether it's Shedeur or whether it's Dylan Gabriel getting those wins. I'd like to see a little more efficiency out of Quinshon Judkins. I don't know, that putting him in the Wildcat for those 2 touchdowns, I'm not sure how much that tells me about Kevin Stefanski's belief in Shedeur executing the red zone offense, but hey, I'll take those scores.
No, he's got a lot of a way to go if he was never getting any first team reps until this week, so he might have to work his way into it. The Raiders, meanwhile, dropped to 2-9. Their offense has been terrible. They fired Chip Kelly after this game. Will that help?
Probably not. I mean, Greg Olson is he's going to be the OC there. And, he's had some success as a coordinator in the NFL. But, I mean, Chip Kelly's not out there playing offensive line, and that's really their problem. They don't have much in the way of an offensive line. That puts pressure on Geno, and you can go all the way back through Geno's entire career, his flame out in New York, his resurgence in Seattle. If he's got protection and he doesn't have guys around his feet, around his legs, he can make some plays, but he doesn't handle a dirty pocket very well. And playing for the Raiders this year, he's back there in a pocket full of lint and unwrapped mints.
The Jacksonville Jaguars went to battle the Arizona Cardinals, got the 27-24 win in overtime. A lot of overtime games that shouldn't have been that close. Brenton Strange, back off IR, caught 5 passes for 93 yards, seems to have slid right back into a prime role with the Jaguar offense. Do you like him moving forward?
Well, we liked him coming into the season. We felt like he had a great opportunity to be the tight end there. We liked his ability over the middle with Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter on the outside. And so it makes sense that, we're going to lean back in to him being productive as a tight end. So for all that you need at the tight end position, you could do a heck of a lot worse.
Meanwhile, for Arizona, another big game for Michael Wilson. Caught 10 passes for 118 yards. Do you think he can keep this up going forward?
So my initial reaction is, we felt like he was good coming out of college. He just had an injury history. So, yeah, I feel like he can keep it up. However, I think in order for him to keep it up, playing on a team with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, they need to get a quarterback that can support 3 high-end receiving options. Right now, Jacoby Brissett is the best of the guys they have to do that. And I don't know if, they keep Kyler Murray shut down when he's eligible to come off of IR or not. It feels like we're coming to the end of the Kyler Murray in Arizona run. But yeah, I think Michael Wilson is a great complement to Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride.
See what they can do. Should be back together on the field this next week. The Philadelphia Eagles went to play the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys fell down 21-0 and came all the way back, got the 24-21 victory. How about them Cowboys? Eagles dropped to 8-3. Could this be a little bit of a turning point for them?
Like turning up or turning down?
Like, need to get their shit together.
The Eagles don't like to have Jalen Hurts throw the ball 39 times. But Saquon Barkley ran for 22 yards. They had 11 carries outside of Jalen Hurts between Barkley and Tank Bigsby. Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown both had good games. Barkley had a decent game in the receiving department. But, you know, the Eagles had 187 yards on their first 3 drives, and then they had 152 in the last 40 minutes of game time. Yeah, that's not a recipe for success. So for whatever reason, yeah, and maybe it was just the Cowboys. Yeah, I pat me on the back. I picked the Cowboys to win. Didn't look good for about 20 minutes.
But then
maybe a little longer.
Well, and so, Dallas now 5-1. They're, there's going to take a lot of work to get into the playoffs, I think, in the NFC, because the Lions, who are a team we like at 7-4, would currently not be in the playoffs. But can Dallas work themselves back in the conversation?
I mean, anything is possible, I suppose, until you're mathematically eliminated, but I'm not banking on it. But it does seem that those additions that they've made to their defense are paying early dividends.
And George Pickens has been a great pickup. I think Devontae Adams was the pickup of the offseason, but George Pickens not too far behind. He's actually been the second best receiver in the league.
He is good. 9 for 146 and a touchdown. Now, CeeDee Lamb's got to get his efficiency back in order.
He dropped.
Devontae Williams still
dropped his
doing his thing.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about when we make our Thanksgiving picks, but they have the most interesting Thanksgiving Day game. The Falcons went to New Orleans, got the 24-10 victory behind old man.
Speaking of interesting,
yeah, behind old man Kirk Cousins, 16-23, 199 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception. Actually ran for 5 yards on 2 carries. What did you think of Cousins back in the starting lineup?
I mean, he was fine, but it was the Saints. It's not like he was going up against, the Houston Texans defense or the Cleveland Browns defense. It was the Saints. I don't know. I don't know what the real expectations are for him. I saw the blurb today. They were talking about, depending on Penix's surgery and recovery, that they may have to Josh Rosen him and just kind of cut ties and be like, dude, you need to stop before you don't have any knees.
Well, because now
I don't think Cousins is the long-term answer.
No, but I mean, they still have him for a couple more years at quite a pretty penny, so you might as well use him, I guess.
But what are they going to do? They'll probably bring in somebody young, and now Cousins has got to mentor him, and Cousins is going to be like getting aggravated about it. As nice a guy as he wants to be, at some point you're like, I'm not training any more of my replacements, man.
I mean, I don't know necessarily that they'll take a quarterback this offseason or be able to. They may just have to go with what they've got. Or
who's their third? Let me see. Do they have who they got on the practice squad? I'm not expecting somebody great. Let's see. Easton Stick.
Yeah.
And you got Kyle Trask on the practice squad. So
what a swell time.
Yeah.
For the Saints, Alvin Kamara with an MCL strain that allowed rookie running back Devin Neal to get more work. Only 7 carries for 18 yards, but did catch 5 for 43. What did you think of Neal?
I think that's a reasonably good performance for him. If Kamara misses extended time, Audric Estime is the backup. Well, I saw today they signed Evan Hull off the practice squad. And seems like they got somebody else I can't remember. No, Evan Hull was the practice squad guy. I'd like to see, Evan Neal get more carries than Taysom Hill. That would be nice. But, he had a good career in college at Kansas or Kansas State. What was a productive running back. And he's kind of been a dynasty darling, as one of those mid-round rookie running backs that's got NFL size and speed. Look, just let him get settled in, and when he gets the opportunity, he should be able to be productive. Well, Kamara's in his 9th year, and while the early years he didn't necessarily have a ton of carries, he still took plenty of hits, catching 81 balls per year. So, it makes sense that it could be we could be approaching the changing of the guard there.
Sunday Night Football saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to Los Angeles. The Rams got the 34-7 victory. Worse yet, Baker Mayfield with an AC joint sprain. If he's hurt and actually misses any time, could the 6-5 Buccaneers actually miss the playoffs?
They could. I like Teddy Bridgewater, and he wasn't stellar by any stretch of the imagination. And Todd Bowles came out and said, look, if Bridgewater's starting, we're going to have to make some adjustments to the offense. Teddy, had that gruesome knee injury several years ago, and he isn't quite as mobile as Baker. That being said, I think he can throw the ball decent. I don't think he's got as strong an arm as Baker, but I think he's a reasonably good quarterback. So you got Emeka Egbuka and Cade Otton and a nice set of running backs. Chris Godwin's back. Tez Johnson's playing well. Sterling Shepard. So they've got weapons. And so if they can build the offense to operate towards Teddy's strengths, they should be able to hold on and make the playoffs.
Meanwhile, for the Rams, Colby Parkinson stepping up again. Their tight end, Tyler Higbee, on IR. Colby Parkinson, 4 receptions, 41 yards, a touchdown for a second straight game. Are you liking him?
Yeah, I think he's sort of one of these plug and play kind of tight ends. He had that stat line where you're like, man, if I can just get 4 for 40 out of this guy, I'm going to be happy, and a touchdown will be a bonus. Well, if 4 for 41 with a touchdown, it's like best case scenario out of Colby Parkinson. So you're going in next week, you're plugging him in your lineup, and you're going, give me 4 for 40 again, buddy. Give me those 8 points, 10 points. And if you get a touchdown, I'll take that bonus.
There you go. Monday Night Football, the Carolina Panthers, who are chasing the Bucs, went to play the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers get the 20-9 victory. Dennis, what is up with the Panthers? Their best part of their offense has arguably been Rico Dowdle. They only gave him 6 carries last night, despite it being a relatively close game.
Sometimes these offensive gurus are just too smart for their own damn good, and they end up outsmarting nobody but themselves. Dowdle looked like Dowdle and Hubbard both averaged over 5 and over 6 yards per carry. It would make sense. Well, if they're getting these big chunks, let's let them run the ball a little bit. Dowdle had 4 receptions for 36 yards. Hubbard had 4 for 27. So both guys were being productive in both the run and pass game. Inefficient game for Teteroa McMillan. No receiver. Like Dowdle led him in receiving with 36 yards. It just was one of those games where they just couldn't quite click on anything. Young with the 2 interceptions. They were just slightly off. And you've got to be able to make those throws. And both of them, he just missed.
Meanwhile, for the 49ers, they got Ricky Pearsall back the last couple weeks, but you wouldn't know it by the lineup production. Only 6 targets, has only got 3 passes for 6 yards. It seems like they would like him to be a bigger part of their offense both this year and moving forward, as it seems like they're getting ready to move on from Brandon Ayuk. But what do we make of Pearsall?
I think he's fine. They are right now, the offense runs through Christian McCaffrey. He had 31 touches this week. Next, I hate to say it, but I'm not expecting Christian McCaffrey to make it through next season. I think if you got him this year and you're in Dynasty, get to the end of the season, win that title, and then sell him. Just sell. And if he plays well starting next year, great. But we see him have these high touch seasons and then be broke for a couple, and he's getting older. I don't know. He's a cheat code when he's healthy, and he's healthy right now. Purdy did only throw the ball 32 times. Pearsall was second in wide receiver targets with 4, second in wide receiver snaps with 76%. He played 53 snaps. He played 22% more snaps than the wide receiver 3, Demarcus Robinson, and he had double the targets. So those underlying metrics would seem to bode well for Pearsall. You just got to wait for it to kind of fall into place. But when you've got Kittle, Jennings, and McCaffrey combining for 24 of the 32 targets, 75% of the targets is pretty gluttonous, to say the least.
Well, that'll do it for week 12. We're going to be back on Friday morning looking at the rest of week 13, but there are 3 games on Thursday night. So before we get out of here, wanted to have you make our Thanksgiving Day picks. The second matchup between the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions at Detroit. Both teams fighting for a playoff spot. Both teams sitting on 7 wins. Packers got that week 1 victory. I am picking Detroit at home on Thanksgiving Day. How are you feeling?
I also am picking Detroit. I know they've got some issues along their O-line with injuries and age. But in Jahmyr Gibbs, I trust.
Green Bay also a fair amount of injuries and issues. Something to keep an eye out. Jaden Reed is back practicing. I don't know if they'll bring him back. I don't know if it'll even matter with Jordan Love throwing that between 140 and 160 yards a game. The middle game might actually be one of the best of the day. It feels like an elimination game. The 6-5 Kansas City Chiefs at the 5-1 Dallas Cowboys. Both teams are actually in 10th place in their respective conference, trying to get back in that playoff picture. It feels like if either of them loses, they're kind of hosed. I am actually going to take Dallas at home.
You know, I had the Chiefs picked, and the more I talked about Dallas's defense earlier, I think I'm going to switch. I think I'm going to go with the Cowboys too.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking better. Kansas City just hasn't been like spectacular at anything. The night game probably looked great when they were setting the schedule. It looks a little less exciting right now. The Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens. However, Joe Burrow is supposedly tracking to be back for Cincinnati for some reason. They won't have T. Higgins because he's been ruled out with a concussion, but Jamar Chase should be back from his 1-game spitting suspension. Baltimore, back in first place in the division, hasn't looked incredible on offense or defense. I went back and forth in this one. This matchup kind of scares me, but I'm going to take the Ravens at home.
Yeah, I as much as I would like to, jump on the Joe Beasley bandwagon, I think I'm going to roll with the Ravens too.
Is the theory they think that Joe can come back and maybe just win? How many games they have? 6 games in a row and get them to 9-8, and that might be good enough to win that division.
I have to say, I imagine that is their.
I mean, because I guess you're not totally out of it. These teams are only 6-5. They're really only 2 or 3 games back. So see how it goes. Well, if you have a little extra time on your hands, you want to escape the family before the big meals start, Dennis, what can the people do?
Head on over to your favorite podcast platform and hit that search button. Type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast and give us a like, give us a subscribe. Let's pump them numbers up. I mean, the way Elon's, muting me on Twitter or whatnot, we're not going to get monetized, but hey, give us a listen.
I was checking to make sure this was the actual page, but apparently Ian Rappaport on his official page has posted that apple pie is bad and we shouldn't even be debating this, nor should we be
Fuck
eating
that
it.
guy.
That's what I mean, like, talk about getting yourself canceled going into an American holiday.
Schefter was always my favorite.
There you go. Well, that'll do it for us today. We'll be back on Friday morning talking about the Black Friday matchup and all the rest of the Week 13 action, recapping hopefully 3 successful picks for us on Thanksgiving Day. Hope you guys have a wonderful and a safe Thanksgiving and a happy Thanksgiving. We will see you guys on Friday.